What if I told you that the absolute greatest threat to global peace isn't, some ruthless dictator in a faraway country,
Right.
but rather it's actually the very existence of your own country's social safety net? Like, what if the system that provides your health care and your unemployment checks is actually the villain of international integration?
I mean, it sounds completely backwards, doesn't it?
Totally backwards.
Because we're so conditioned to view a welfare state as like the ultimate expression of human empathy.
Right. Yeah. If I'm a worker literally anywhere in the world, I view that system as the pinnacle of societal kindness.
Exactly.
But today, we are dismantling basically everything you think you know about empathy and power and why good intentions usually lead to catastrophic global conflicts.
It's a heavy one today.
It really is. We're looking at the hidden mechanics of human nature, and we're doing it through the lens of a man who has spent 40 years just staring straight into the geopolitical abyss.
Yeah, we are talking about Arend Jan Boekestijn. He's a renowned Dutch historian, a foreign affairs commentator, and he recently gave his final university lecture, just wrapping up this massive 4-decade career.
Wow, 40 years.
Yeah, 40 years. And what he presented in this final lecture wasn't just, a dry historical retrospective.
Like a boring timeline of events.
Exactly. No, it wasn't that at all. It was more like a masterclass in how to move through an increasingly hysterical world without completely losing your mind.
And I think that's our mission today for this deep dive, because we are going to explore how his entire worldview was forged by, of all things, the vindictive struggles of a 12-year-old tomato farmer.
Which is such a wild origin story.
It really is. And then how he dissects the inherent sociopathy of group dynamics and how he somehow magically arrives at the music of Johann Sebastian Bach as the only mathematical proof of a higher power.
It is quite a journey.
It's a huge journey. But whether you're, trying to make sense of shifting global superpowers or honestly just trying to survive the territorial dynamics of your own office.
All right, the office politics.
Yeah, exactly. The frameworks we're unpacking today are just universally applicable.
Huh.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because it's really strange that a historian of war became this massive hit in audio media just as the world started catching fire.
Yeah, and we have to start with a rather dark paradox that Boekestijn himself wrestles with.
Okay, what is it?
Well, here is a man who spent his life teaching the intricacies of, 19th century diplomacy. And before 2022, he and his co-hosts were producing these audio deep dives into incredibly obscure, hyper-academic topics.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he actually joked about doing this extensive multi-part analysis on the labor market in Moldova.
Which, I mean, with all due respect to the Moldovan labor market.
Right.
That is not exactly leading the global news cycle. That's the kind of topic you can luxuriously debate when the world is quiet.
Precisely. It's the absolute luxury of peacetime.
Yeah.
But then February 2022 happens. Russia invades Ukraine, and the European continent, which had essentially convinced itself that that land wars were just a thing of the past.
Right, like ancient history.
Exactly. Suddenly that continent catches fire. Tanks are rolling, cities are being shelled. And practically overnight, Boekestijn's niche geopolitical commentary show skyrockets. It hits massive daily popularity.
I want to pause on that for a second. Just think about how uncomfortable that must feel.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like the meteorologist dilemma, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Like, if you study hurricanes your whole life, it's deeply, deeply fascinating on an intellectual level when a Category 5 storm forms.
You've been waiting for it.
Exactly. But then that storm starts actually tearing the roofs off people's houses.
Yeah.
And suddenly you are the most vital person on television, your ratings go through the roof, but you are undeniably benefiting from a mass catastrophe. I mean, you'd feel like a profiteer.
And he uses almost those exact words.
Really?
Yeah. He describes feeling like a, quote, war profiteer.
Yeah.
Because the reality of modern media is that tragedy and terror drive audience engagement.
Sadly true.
When the world feels safe, geopolitics is just for academics. But when the world feels like it's ending, everyone is suddenly an active listener.
Yeah, everyone tunes in.
But, and this is the shift, as the war dragged on, Boekestijn realized his role wasn't just about capitalizing on that anxiety. It evolved into what he calls being a war healer.
A war healer.
Yeah.
Wow. That is a fascinating concept, because when people are just terrified by the news, they aren't actually looking for raw data, are they?
No, not at all.
Like if I'm panicking about a nuclear threat on a Tuesday morning, a list of troop movements doesn't help me sleep at night. I'm looking for a pattern. I'm looking for meaning.
And this cuts right to the core of human psychology. When the present feels totally unprecedented, our anxiety skyrockets because we feel unmoored.
Right, we have no anchor.
Exactly. We have no framework to process the threat. So a historian steps into that void and says, look, I know this feels completely new and terrifying to you, but let me show you the historical rhymes.
The pattern.
Yes, let me show you how humanity has navigated this exact type of abyss before. And providing that context acts as an anchor. It prevents the public from just mentally collapsing under the weight of a 24-hour doom cycle. It's an act of sense-making.
That makes so much sense. But to understand how a person gets to a place where they can just calmly anchor a panicking public,
Yeah.
you have to look at their own foundation. Like, how do you build a mind that doesn't panic in the face of all that?
And for that, Boekestijn points directly to a deeply personal origin story. We actually have to go back to 1932.
Well, okay, taking us back.
Yeah, to a town called De Lier in the Netherlands.
So what's happening in De Lier in 1932?
Well, we are looking at the socioeconomic structure of the agrarian Netherlands between the world wars. Boekestijn's father was a 12-year-old boy, and he was the son of a tomato grower.
A tomato farmer.
Right. And in that era, and specifically in that social class, your path was rigidly predefined.
You didn't have a lot of options.
Yeah. No options at all. You finished primary school, and you put your hands in the dirt. You work the soil to keep the family farm afloat.
Just grueling physical labor.
Exactly. That was your absolute destiny, and questioning it was almost unheard of.
But this kid, right, after just a few months working the fields, he realizes he has this ravenous appetite for learning.
Yeah.
The dirt isn't enough for him. He wants more. So he goes to his father, who would be Boekestijn's grandfather, and says he wants to continue his education.
And the grandfather's reaction is perfectly indicative of the time.
What does he say?
He essentially says, look, I prefer you here because you are a cheap laborer. We need the hands.
Wow. Brutally honest.
Very honest. But crucially, he doesn't forbid it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He tells the boy, if you want it that badly, get on your bike, ride to the city of Delft, and talk to the director of the school yourself.
So you literally have a 12-year-old kid biking from a rural farm all the way to the city to apply for this higher tier educational track.
Yeah, it was called the HBS.
And we need to unpack what the HBS represented in 1932, because this wasn't just like the neighborhood high school.
Not at all. The HBS was a very academically rigorous school, heavily focused on mathematics and the sciences.
Right.
And it was originally designed for the higher bourgeoisie. This is where the sons of doctors and lawyers and notaries were sent to prepare for university and high society roles.
So it's an elite incubator.
Exactly. It was for the upper crust.
So just imagine the scene. In walks this kid from a tomato farm.
Yeah.
He probably smells like the fields. He's speaking with a heavy, rural, working-class accent. And he sits across from the school director.
The contrast must have been stark.
Insanely stark. And the director doesn't just see a prospective student. He sees a peasant trying to step out of his designated social class.
Yes.
The class prejudice is just immediate, and it's brutal.
Yeah, the director decides right then and there that this boy does not belong in his pristine institution.
Just looking at him.
Just looking at him. But instead of just saying no and sending him away, he engages in this vicious kind of psychological warfare.
Which is just so cruel for a 12-year-old.
It's terrible. He sets an impossible, vindictive standard designed to just break the boy's spirit and force him back to the farm.
Right.
He tells the 12-year-old that he will administer a test covering the previous year's material, and the grading scale is 1 to 10.
Yeah.
If the boy makes 0 mistakes, like absolute perfection, he will receive a 10.
But if he makes even one single mistake...
If he makes 1 mistake, just 1, the director tells him he will receive a grade of 1.
I won out of 10.
Total, absolute failure.
I mean, it's a trap. It's entirely designed to prove to the boy that his ambitions are foolish, that he doesn't belong there.
Exactly.
But the boy doesn't break.
No, he doesn't.
He takes the test, and he gets straight 10s. He actually beats the impossible standard.
It's amazing.
And there's this incredible moment upon his graduation, years later. That same director comes up to congratulate him, and the boy just looks him in the eye and says, "Not thanks to you."
Not thanks to you. It's just this profound moment of quiet, hard-earned rebellion.
Oh, it's brilliant.
But the reason Boekestijn shares this story isn't just to, boast about his father's intellect.
Right.
It's about the environment that 12-year-old boy eventually created.
Because he went on to do great things.
He did. He went on to earn a PhD and become a university professor himself.
Wow. From the tomato farm to a professor.
Exactly. But despite that massive upward mobility, He never became arrogant. He built a home for his own children that was warm and intellectually open and remarkably grounded.
Which is so rare when someone climbs the ladder that fast. Boekestijn notes that he never even went through a rebellious teenager phase against his parents, which sounds almost alien today.
Yeah, no teenage angst.
Yeah, right. He just genuinely admired his father. He saw the scars of what his father had overcome, and he respected the intellectual rigor at their dinner table.
And that specific environment bred a very specific, and I would say quite rare, intellectual stance in Boekestijn himself.
What's that?
It bred what we can call epistemological modesty.
Epistemological modesty. Okay, let's define that term for the listener, because it's a big one.
Let's do it.
Epistemology is basically the study of how we know what we know. It's the philosophy of truth.
Exactly.
So epistemological modesty is basically waking up and realizing, wait, my worldview isn't a hard, undeniable fact like gravity.
Yes. Yeah. Getting a university job was nearly impossible, but he somehow managed to land one.
But he doesn't just sit back once he gets it right. He starts really hustling to get his writing notice.
Oh, big time.
He describes working on his university lectures all day, coming home, starting an opinion piece for the NRC Handelsblad, which is a major Dutch newspaper, at like 11:00 p.m., finishing it at 2 a.m., and then biking through the dark to a local Holiday Inn, just so he can use their fax machine to send it to the editors before the morning print run.
Biking at 2 a.m. just to use a fax machine, the hustle is undeniable.
Completely undeniable.
But notice how he frames his own success when he talks about this. He doesn't look back at the 2 a.m. fax machine runs and say, you know, I succeeded because I was this relentless genius who just outworked everyone.
Right, which is what a lot of people would say.
Exactly. Instead, he attributes his success to maybe 1% hard work and 99% sheer luck and privilege.
Wow, that's the modesty.
Yes. He acknowledges that his entire trajectory was made possible because he was lucky enough to be born into the supportive, intellectually stimulating home that his father, the tomato farmer, thought a school director to build.
I think this touches on something so many people struggle with today, which is imposter syndrome.
Oh, for sure.
You're constantly told to fight imposter syndrome, you know, to fake it till you make it, and to aggressively assert our own brilliance.
Claim your space. Right.
Right. But Boekestijn's making a crucial distinction here between paralyzing insecurity and healthy realism. Knowing your own limits and acknowledging the massive role of luck in your life isn't a weakness, it's actually a superpower.
It absolutely is a superpower. Because if you have that healthy realism, you don't navigate the world with a fragile ego that constantly needs to be defended.
Right, you're not always on edge.
Exactly. You don't feel the need to tear other people down to make yourself look taller. If a colleague writes a brilliant article, you can genuinely admire it.
You can just appreciate it.
Yeah. You can say, wow, that's incredible. I probably couldn't have written that. And you can be completely at peace with it.
It totally kills the toxic jealousy that ruins so many careers.
Completely.
But I want to pivot here. Because if a person is that grounded, if they are that comfortable with their own limitations, how do they handle massive paradigm shifts?
That's the real test.
Because that brings us to the thinkers who started showing up in Boekestijn's childhood living room, and specifically a theologian named Harry Quaitert.
Ah, yes, Quaitert. He was a frequent guest in their home, and to say he represented an intellectual earthquake in the Netherlands, it would be a massive understatement. To understand the shockwave Quaitert sent through the culture, we really have to understand the religious climate of the Dutch Reformed community at the time.
Okay, set the scene for us. What was the baseline before Quaitert just walked in and shook things up?
Well, it was a culture defined by rigid, orthodox certainty. People believed they knew exactly how things are. The doctrines were settled, the moral rules were handed down by divine dictate, and absolute certainty was viewed as the highest possible virtue.
So no gray areas.
Zero gray areas. In fact, doubt was literally seen as a sin.
Wow. And then Quaitert drops a phrase that basically shatters the foundation of all that certainty.
He does.
He starts arguing that all speaking about above comes from below.
All speaking about above comes from below. It sounds simple, but it is a massive, massive philosophical shift.
How so?
He was arguing that human beings are the ones actually constructing religious and moral language.
Right.
Our concepts of the divine, our moral frameworks, they aren't simply dropped from the sky intact. We humans from below are giving words to the transcendent. We are structuring the morality based entirely on our limited human understanding.
So for a 12-year-old Boekestijn, sitting there listening in the living room. This is an absolute revelation.
It changes everything.
It introduces the idea that human institutions, even the most sacred ones, are fallible simply because humans made them.
Yes.
It champions intellectual honesty and doubt. And Boekestijn applies this later in life to point out that extreme orthodoxies, whether they are religious fundamentalism or pure Marxism or pure libertarianism, they all suffer from the exact same fatal flaw.
Which
They're way too certain, and they are far too optimistic about human nature.
Exactly. They assume they have found the final, perfect mathematical equation for how to organize human society.
Right.
But if you accept Queteart's premise that our grand structures are human inventions, it forces that epistemological modesty we talked about.
You have to step back.
You do.
Oh.
It forces you to admit that your grand societal plan might be deeply flawed simply because you are deeply flawed.
Okay, but I want to push back on this on behalf of the listener because there's a dark side to this philosophy, isn't there?
Oh, there is.
If we accept that all morality is just constructed by humans from below, doesn't that open a terrifying door?
It absolutely can.
Like, if nothing is actually sacred, if morality is just a human consensus, doesn't it just devolve into a Nietzschean power struggle?
Right, survival of the fittest.
Yeah. Why doesn't the biggest, strongest guy in the room just rewrite all the rules to benefit himself? If it's all invented anyway, who's to say his rules are wrong?
And that is the exact fear that drives so much resistance to this kind of relativistic thinking.
Because it's scary.
It is. If morality is entirely relative, what protects the vulnerable? But the thing is, Boekestijn doesn't shy away from this.
He faces it.
He faces it head on. He admits that a purely relativistic, constructivist universe is terrifying.
Yeah.
And why? Because humanity, historically speaking, is a deeply violent and selfish species.
Right. So how does a realist like him reconcile that? Does he just throw up his hands and accept that the strong will eat the weak?
No, not at all. He points to a pragmatic, almost desperate need to defend the concept of sacredness, especially for the marginalized.
Okay, explain that.
Well, Boekestijn notes that vulnerable people actively need morality to come from above, or at the very least, they need it to be treated by society as if it is unshakable and transcendent.
Right, they need a shield.
Exactly. He references Martin Luther King Jr., who constantly appealed to a higher divine moral law to argue against the human-constructed laws of segregation.
Because if you are at the bottom of the social hierarchy, you cannot rely on the majority to simply vote to recognize your humanity.
No, you can't.
You need your humanity to be an undeniable sacred fact that exists above the ballot box.
Precisely. And Boekestijn points to the drafting of the United States Declaration of Independence as the perfect historical illustration of this exact tension.
Oh, this is a great example.
Yeah, when Thomas Jefferson was drafting it, he originally wrote, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable."
Sacred and undeniable.
Yes. But Benjamin Franklin and some others pushed to change it to, "We hold these truths to be self-evident."
Because they wanted to root it in the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Right. They wanted it to sound rational and secular and observable rather than purely religious.
Yes, they wanted it to be a fact of nature. But the tragic irony, the glaring historical hypocrisy of that moment is that the equality of men was emphatically not self-evident in their society.
Definitely not.
Many of the men signing that very document literally owned other human beings. The society they lived in proved every single day that human equality was not a self-evident fact of nature.
Right. The evidence was the exact opposite.
Exactly. So to declare that all men are created equal required a massive leap of faith. It required them to anchor those rights in a creator to make them inalienable.
I see.
Boekestijn's point is that you might conceptually construct human rights from below as a human invention, but you have to anchor them to something above so they can't simply be voted away by a tyrannical majority.
That is fascinating. So it's a pragmatic necessity. We have to treat certain moral baselines as sacred, even if we secretly know we are the ones who formulated the words.
Exactly. It's functional.
But that leads us directly into much darker territory.
It does.
Because if individual humans construct morality, what happens when those individuals stop acting alone?
Yep.
Like what happens when they form a massive group or a corporation or a nation state?
This is the pivot. This is the pivot from theology to hard geopolitics. And it's guided by another profound thinker that shaped Boekestijn's entire career.
Who is that?
Reinhold Niebuhr.
Niebuhr, often referred to as the Cold War professor, right?
That's the one.
He was famously the favorite theologian of people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Barack Obama. And Niebuhr's core framework is basically a punch to the gut for anyone who is overly optimistic about humanity.
It really is. Niebuhr wrote a seminal book called Moral Man and Immoral Society.
Moral man and immoral society.
Yes, and the thesis is exactly what the title suggests. He argued that an individual human being is entirely capable of empathy and altruism and moral restraint.
Okay, so one-on-one, we're okay.
Right. If I meet you on the street and you are hungry, my individual conscience might compel me to share my food with you. I might actually sacrifice my own comfort for a total stranger. But Niebuhr argued, as soon as humans form a group, whether that's a social class, a corporation, a nation state, that group becomes inherently, ruthlessly selfish.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of why that happens.
Yeah.
Because it's not like the people inside the group change into monsters.
Right. They don't.
Boekestijn illustrates this with Niebuhr's time living in Detroit, observing the Ford Motor Company and the extreme wealth disparity there.
That's a perfect example.
Right. If you take a rich industrialist as an individual man, he might be moved to charity. He might feel bad for a sick worker and personally pay to build a hospital for him.
Yes, as an individual.
But the economic class of the rich, the shareholders as a collective, they will never, ever voluntarily give up their systemic power or wealth out of the goodness of their hearts. They have to be forced, usually by unionization or government regulation.
Exactly. And the psychological mechanism at play here is the dilution of individual conscience.
Dilution of conscience.
Yes. When we act as a group, we essentially outsource our morality to the collective goal. We justify ruthless behavior by telling ourselves, well, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the good of my team or for my country or to maximize shareholder value. The group demands loyalty, and that loyalty overrides universal morality.
I mean, think about this in your own life, just in a corporate setting.
Oh, it happens everywhere.
Imagine different departments in a large company fighting over an annual budget. The individuals in the marketing department and the individuals in the engineering department might be lovely people.
Probably are.
They chat over coffee, they ask about each other's kids. They are perfectly moral individuals.
Right.
But when budget season hits, those departments as entities become fiercely territorial. They will hoard resources, they'll hide information, and they'll actively undermine each other just to protect their group survival.
That is exactly it. Now take that corporate departmental friction and scale it up to the level of nation states equipped with militaries.
That's terrifying.
It is. Boekestijn quotes an ancient piece of wisdom here. If the wishes of men are fulfilled, the gods laugh in their fists.
Wow. The gods laugh in their fists.
Yes. It's a stark recognition of the tragic, endless nature of human desires. Humans are fundamentally a violent species. Therefore, in geopolitics, you simply cannot treat states like individual people.
You can't appeal to their better angels.
No, you cannot assume they have a conscience. Boekestijn argues that states actually act like billiard balls.
I want to expand on this billiard ball metaphor because I think it perfectly captures the physics of international relations.
It really does.
Think about an actual billiard table. The balls don't have morals. A cue ball doesn't feel guilty about knocking the 8-ball into the corner pocket.
Right. It doesn't apologize.
Exactly. It doesn't negotiate. It just transfers kinetic energy.
Mm-hmm.
And Boekestijn is arguing that nation states are exactly the same. You can paint them different colors. You can paint one democracy, one communism, one monarchy. But when they collide on the global table, it's just cold, hard physics.
Cold, hard physics. They only respond to the physics of power. You cannot rely on good intentions. You cannot send flowers and a polite diplomatic letter to a dictator and expect them to undergo a sudden moral awakening.
It's just not going to happen.
If they see an advantage, they will take it. And this leads to Niebuhr's most critical policy takeaway, one that deeply influenced Boekestijn's entire geopolitical outlook.
Which is?
Because of this inherent group selfishness, power absolutely requires counterpower.
Wait, I want to make sure I'm fully grasping this. He's saying that maintaining a massive military or keeping a balance of power isn't just a cynical geopolitical strategy.
No.
He's arguing it actually has a moral quality to it.
Yes. There is a profound moral quality to maintaining a strong defense.
Really?
Yes. If you purposefully weaken your own defenses out of some idealistic sense of pacifism, you aren't actually creating peace. You're creating a power vacuum.
Oh, I see.
And because states are selfish and opportunistic, that vacuum actively invites aggression. By being weak, by refusing to build counterpower, you are inadvertently inviting war and bloodshed.
So having pure pacifist intentions can actually lead to the most catastrophic moral failures if those intentions aren't backed by realistic physical strength.
Exactly. It's a paradox.
That is a grim, heavy philosophy to carry around.
Yeah.
But how does this play out in modern leadership?
Well, we have some recent examples.
Yeah, like when a leader has to actually sit in the Oval Office and make decisions based on these physics, what does it actually look like? Because Boekestijn provides a very direct and very stark comparison between two wildly different U.S. presidents who navigated this exact ethical minefield.
Yes. We are looking here at Barack Obama and Donald Trump.
Okay, and it is crucial to state up front for our listeners. We are merely relaying Boekestijn's geopolitical analysis of these two figures as case studies in the ethics of power.
Right, exactly.
We aren't taking a political side here. We are just strictly examining the mechanics of their statecraft as outlined by the source.
Absolutely. So let's start with Obama.
Okay.
Boekestijn notes that Obama was deeply, explicitly influenced by Reinhold Niebuhr. He read him extensively.
Right, he was a fan.
He was. Consequently, Obama embraced self-doubt. He tried to practice the ethics of consequences, rather than just the ethics of good intentions.
So what does that mean in practice?
It means he didn't just want to do what felt morally righteous in the moment. He agonized over the long-term downstream effects of deploying American power.
But Boekestijn points out the inherent danger in this Niebuhrian approach, doesn't he?
He does.
Because endless self-doubt, while it's intellectually honest, it can lead to total operational paralysis. And the prime example detailed in his analysis is the infamous Syrian Red Line incident.
Yes, the red line.
Let's walk through the mechanics of that just to refresh the listener. It's 2012, and the Syrian civil war is raging.
Awful situation.
Obama publicly states that the use of chemical weapons by Bashar al-Assad's regime would cross a quote-unquote red line, and it would trigger a U.S. military response. It was a classic projection of counterpower. He was trying to establish deterrence.
But then in 2013, the Ghouta chemical attack happens.
Right.
The red line is officially crossed, and Obama hesitates.
He doesn't strike.
No, he agonizes over the consequences of a military strike. He is heavily influenced by the shadow of the Iraq War, terrified of dragging the U.S. into another Middle Eastern quagmire.
Which was understandable.
Completely understandable. He is also impacted by the UK Parliament's sudden vote against military intervention, which stripped away his international cover. So he steps back.
Yeah.
He decides not to launch the strikes, opting instead for a diplomatic deal negotiated with Russia to remove the weapons.
And Boekestijn asks a brutal, lingering question about this moment. Was this a display of noble intellectual restraint? Or was it a dangerous display of weakness that shattered American credibility and emboldened dictators around the world?
It's the ultimate Niebuhrian dilemma.
Right, because by not enforcing the red line, by overthinking the consequences, did he accidentally invite more chaos? Because if your opponent knows you are paralyzed by doubt, your deterrence basically fails.
Exactly. And then Boekestijn pivots to Donald Trump.
The complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Yes. If Obama represents the paralysis of doubt, Boekestijn views Trump as the absolute, terrifying absence of doubt.
Boekestijn analyzes Trump's methodology as purely transactional, right?
Huh.
Driven largely by self-enrichment and ego. And he actually compares his operational style to that of a mafia capo.
A mafia capo.
Yeah, because he didn't learn statecraft from reading Niebuhr at a university. He learned ruthless zero-sum tactics from his father and his background in New York real estate lawsuits.
It's a totally different training ground.
Completely. In that world, you don't agonize over consequences. You immediately sue, you overwhelm your opponent, you create chaos, and you just demand compliance.
And when translated to geopolitics, Boekestijn connects this directly to a concept in game theory known as the madman theory, or the mad dictator.
Okay, unpack the madman theory for us. How does acting erratic actually function as a geopolitical tool? Because it seems like it would just be bad.
Well, in game theory, if your opponent believes you are completely rational and calculating like Obama, they can predict your moves. They can calculate exactly how far they can push you before you strike back, and they will push right up to that absolute edge.
That makes sense.
But if you can convince your opponent that you are volatile, unpredictable, and entirely willing to do something totally disproportionate if you act a little mad, it creates a culture of profound fear.
Oh.
Your opponents become much more cautious because they simply cannot calculate your response.
It's like playing poker with someone who doesn't even look at their cards and just goes all in on every single hand.
Exactly.
It's terrifying to play against them.
Yeah.
So Trump's unpredictability yields short-term compliance from adversaries who are just simply too scared to test his limits.
Yes. But Boekestijn is quick to point out the fatal flaw in relying on this madman strategy.
What's the flaw?
While it might win a short-term negotiation or force an immediate concession, it fundamentally destroys the system's long-term stability.
Right, because you can't build on it.
Exactly. The entire architecture of the global order runs on trust and predictability. If allies and adversaries believe your word is meaningless, that treaties will just be torn up on a whim, diplomacy crumbles. As the old saying goes, trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback.
That is so true. And this is where Boekestein's realism really shines through. He manages to find one singular, highly pragmatic silver lining to Trump's approach, particularly regarding Europe.
Yes, he does.
And it relates perfectly back to Niebuhr's concept of building counterpower.
It does, because for decades, European nations had essentially been free riding on the United States military.
Just letting the U.S. handle it.
Exactly. Because they knew the U.S. security umbrella would protect them against Russia, European countries could afford to drastically underfund their own militaries and redirect all that money into expansive domestic social programs.
So Trump comes into office, looks at the ledger, and basically threatens to abandon Europe.
Right.
He suggests the U.S. might not honor NATO's Article 5 if European nations don't start paying their fair share. It was deeply terrifying for European leaders who had relied on that American guarantee for half a century.
It was a massive shock.
But Boekestein argues it forced a necessary delayed awakening. By threatening to remove the safety net, Trump inadvertently forced Europe to realize they had to start building their own military counterpower.
And that forced awakening, the realization that Europe might be entirely alone on a very dangerous geopolitical billiard table, brings us to Boekestein's own profound evolution regarding the European Union.
Because he changed his mind on this, right?
He did. He admits that for a long time he was a staunch Eurosceptic.
Which makes perfect sense based on everything we've discussed so far.
Right.
If Niebuhr is right, and groups are inherently selfish, then trying to force dozens of different proud nations into a single, unified European federation seems completely doomed to fail.
It seems impossible.
Boekestein even quotes a mentor who warned him, "The nation-state is tougher than many think. You can't just wish away hundreds of years of national identity and borders."
No, you can't. But the shifting global reality forced him to change his mind.
Why?
When he looks at the map today, squeezed between an aggressively expansionist Russia, a rising and authoritarian China, and an increasingly isolationist, unpredictable United States, he believes Europe has absolutely no choice but to integrate further.
Just purely for survival.
Not out of utopian idealism, but simply for survival.
So we get to the core friction. If integration is necessary for survival, why is building a unified Europe, like a United States of Europe, so incredibly difficult? Why is the nation-state so stubborn?
This is the big question.
And this brings us back to my question at the very beginning of the show. Boekestein provides an economic analysis that is truly jarring. He argues that the entity standing in the way of integration is actually the welfare state.
The welfare state.
He calls it the most selfish entity in existence.
Again, it sounds offensive at first.
Yeah, totally offensive.
But when you look at the mechanics, it makes brutal economic sense. It's selfish because of its boundaries. A national welfare state is fundamentally based on the premise of our own citizens first.
Right.
It is a closed loop of solidarity. You pay high taxes into the Dutch system, you expect Dutch benefits when you get sick or lose your job.
Makes sense.
But the moment you try to integrate that closed, protected system with an open, free market across all of Europe, a massive tension arises.
Okay, walk me through the actual mechanics of that tension. How does it break down in practice?
Okay, let's imagine two countries in a newly integrated free market. We'll call them Country A and Country B.
Got it.
Country A has a highly developed, very generous welfare state.
Okay, nice place to live.
Very nice. But to fund that state, they have to impose high taxes, and they have strict labor laws guaranteeing high wages and benefits for all their workers.
Right.
Consequently, the products they manufacture cost a lot of money to produce.
Okay, that's Country A. High wages, expensive products.
Right. Now, Country B, right next door, has a weak welfare state, low taxes, and very low wages for its workers. Because their labor is cheap, their products are very cheap.
Okay.
So if they are in a completely frictionless, integrated market with no tariffs.
Country B's cheap goods will completely flood Country A.
Exactly.
Consumers in Country A will just buy the cheaper goods. Country A's domestic industries will be crushed. unemployment will spike, and suddenly that generous welfare state collapses because there is no longer a tax base to fund it.
Precisely. Therefore, a national welfare state inherently wants to protect itself. It instinctively resists true integration because it fears being undercut by cheaper labor from outside its borders.
It acts like a fortress.
Yes. The welfare state acts as an economic fortress, and this reality is ruthlessly weaponized by politicians who play a very cynical double game.
The classic Brussels blame game.
Yes.
Boekestijn notes that national politicians will literally go to Brussels, actively participate in drafting new European regulations and treaties, and then return home and act completely shocked.
They feign total ignorance.
They tell their voters, look at these terrible budget cuts and oppressive rules that those evil bureaucrats in Brussels are forcing upon us.
It's wild.
They use the EU as a scapegoat to score cheap populist points, deliberately fracturing the very unity they claim to support internationally.
It's a dangerous, short-sighted game. It prioritizes the next domestic election over the long-term strategic need for counterpower.
Right.
And to illustrate how delicate this balance of power truly is and how quickly it can all fall apart, Boekestijn looks back to a historical master of the game.
Otto von Bismarck.
Otto von Bismarck.
The legendary 19th century German chancellor. What
Strong.
made him the ultimate geopolitical realist in Boekestijn's eyes?
Well, Bismarck unified Germany in 1871, creating this massive, industrially powerful new state right in the center of Europe.
A huge new billiard ball.
Exactly. But Bismarck understood Niebuhr's principles long before Niebuhr even wrote them down. He knew that if Germany grew too ambitious, if it flexed its muscles too much, it would terrify its neighbors.
Yeah, they would gang up on him.
France, Russia, and Britain would inevitably form an alliance to crush Germany out of sheer self-preservation.
So how did he prevent that? How do you keep the billiard balls from colliding when you just dropped a massive new ball right in the middle of the table?
He brilliantly, carefully managed the selfishness of states.
Ow.
He didn't seek to conquer his neighbors to build a megastate. He largely avoided seeking overseas colonies that would provoke the British Empire.
Restraint.
Yes. Instead, he wove a dizzyingly complex web of secret treaties like the reinsurance treaty with Russia that ensured Germany was always part of a majority coalition.
Wow, playing 3D chess.
He really was. He kept France diplomatically isolated so they could never form a coalition against him. He maintained a fragile, intricate peace by constantly balancing the fears and desires of the powers around him.
It was a masterclass in restraint and counterpower. But then, as Boekestijn notes, the tragedy strikes. In 1890, a new, arrogant, young German emperor, Wilhelm II, decides he doesn't need this complex web.
He gets cocky.
He does. He fires Bismarck.
And the moment that masterful restraint was gone, the system began to rapidly unravel. Very fast. Wilhelm II let the treaty with Russia lapse. He started building a massive navy that terrified the British.
Which is exactly what Bismarck avoided.
Exactly. Without Bismarck's delicate balancing act, Germany became aggressive, its neighbors panicked, just as Bismarck predicted, alliances hardened into two armed camps, and just 24 years after Bismarck was fired, the entire continent plunged into the catastrophic bloodbath of World War I.
The gods laughed in their fists.
They truly did.
Millions dead because the delicate balance of counterpower was just abandoned for ego.
Yeah.
It's just a relentless, exhausting cycle of human selfishness, political corruption, and the ever-present threat of war.
It is exhausting.
And here's my question for Boekestijn. If you spend 40 years staring into this specific abyss, analyzing how quickly peace can disintegrate, how does a person find any peace in their own mind?
That's the real question, isn't it?
How do you study this every single day and not just become a total hopeless cynic?
And this is where his final lecture and this deep dive takes its most unexpected and honestly beautiful turn.
I love this part.
After mapping the darkest, most violent corners of human nature, Boekestijn reveals his sanctuary.
Okay, what is it?
He claims that in all his years of study, he has only found one tangible proof of God. One thing that convinces him there is actual transcendence in this chaotic, violent universe.
And it's not a treaty.
No, it's not a treaty. It is the music of Johann Sebastian Bach.
I find this transition just staggering. We go from the bloody trenches of World War I and the mafia tactics of modern politics to an 18th century composer.
It's quite the leap.
Why Bach? What is it about this specific music that a rational, hardened geopolitical realist finds so divine?
It comes down to a specific musical technique that Bach mastered, called counterpoint.
Counterpoint.
Yes. In most popular music, you have a simple melody line, and underneath it, you play a chord progression to support it. But in Bach's counterpoint, especially in his fugues, you have multiple, entirely independent melodic lines playing simultaneously.
So like the left hand and the right hand are playing completely different melodies at the same exact time.
Exactly. And those independent lines interweave, they chase each other, they invert, and they lock together in a structure that is incredibly complex.
Like a puzzle.
It is almost mathematical in its precision. You can look at the sheet music and analyze it like an architectural blueprint or an elegant algebraic equation.
It is supremely logical.
Yeah.
It is the height of human rationality. But the miracle is the output.
Yes, that's the magic. You take this rigid mathematical intellectual puzzle, and when it is actually played, when those notes hit the air, it doesn't sound like math.
Not at all.
It produces the most profound, overwhelming, deeply human emotion. Boekestijn specifically mentions the opening, grinding, intense chords of the St. John Passion.
I mean, think about the physics of what is happening in that moment. We've spent this entire hour establishing that the universe is chaotic, that human nature is inherently selfish, that states act like sociopathic billiard balls just crashing into each other.
Right.
But somehow, a flawed human being managed to organize vibrating air molecules in such a precise, perfect way that centuries later, those vibrations hit our eardrums and make us weep.
It's incredible.
They bypass our intellect entirely and make us feel an undeniable sense of the divine.
It's the ultimate eureka moment. Boekestijn compares it to the profound joy a scientist feels when they are looking at chaotic data and suddenly recognize a hidden, elegant pattern in nature.
Ah, I love that.
It's a moment of clarity that cuts through the noise, the ego, and the tragedy of history. It is a vital reminder that while humanity is capable of horrific destruction and selfishness, we are also capable of creating staggering, transcendent beauty.
He is so passionate about this that he insists on playing classical music at the end of his own geopolitical podcast.
He does.
It's a niche interest, and his producers probably hate it, but he wants to evangelize this beauty. He wants to offer his listeners a moment of grace, like a palate cleanser, after talking about war and corruption for an hour.
And that, I think, brings us to the core synthesis of Boekestijn's worldview, and really the unifying thread of our entire deep dive today.
It ties it all together.
We've traced a remarkable journey. We started with the sheer resilience of a 12-year-old tomato farmer standing up to institutional cruelty.
Right.
We moved through the stark theological realism of Harry Quaitert and Reinhold Niebuhr, accepting that our moralities are constructed and our groups are inherently selfish.
The billiard balls.
And then we navigated the treacherous geopolitical tightropes of Obama, Trump, Bismarck, and the European Union.
And the connective tissue running through all of it, from the dirt on the farm in Dallaire to the global stage in Washington and Brussels, is a Dutch concept Boekestijn champions. Bescheidenheid. Modesty, coupled with profound gratitude.
Bescheidenheit. We are flawed, groupish animals. We build selfish institutions, we cling to our welfare states, and we blunder into devastating conflicts.
We really do.
But we are also capable of recognizing our own limits. We are capable of learning from history, of building alliances and counterpowers to restrain our worst impulses, and occasionally composing something as mathematically perfect as a Bach fugue.
It's about accepting the reality of the map, blood and all, without giving up the desire to draw it better. You don't ignore the darkness, but you don't let it consume you.
Boekestijn perfectly encapsulates this lifelong pursuit by referencing the Serenity Prayer. And it's a prayer actually attributed to Reinhold Niebuhr himself. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
And that brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over today. We've talked a lot about the danger of certainty and the necessity of epistemological modesty on a massive global scale.
Right.
But what about on a personal scale? In our age of hyperconnectivity, your news feed is algorithmically designed to make you certain and to make you outraged about everything every single day. Have we lost the ability to just sit with our own modesty?
It's a profound question.
It is.
If we truly accepted Niebuhr's premise that large groups and institutions are inherently selfish and will always act in their own interest, would we be less perpetually outraged by the news?
Probably.
Would we spend less time yelling at the algorithm and more time focusing on building healthy, realistic counterpowers in our own local communities, our own workplaces, our own lives?
What happens when you stop expecting the geopolitical machine to be perfect and start learning how to actually navigate the muddy waters with a little bit of grace? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the map, keep learning, and maybe, just maybe, put on a little Bach today.